Welcome to the Inside the 90 podcast. The home. This is the home for soccer culture, soccer world conversations. And today we're joined by Mel, who has a fascinating experience in his trip to Spain, the world of the Catalans. And we're here to have a discussion about that. Thanks for joining us, Mel.
Thank you so much, Kyle, for having me. It's an honor to be here with you today, and I think it's a great thing that the beautiful game of soccer has brought us here together today.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to hear it. So tell us about your initial trip on when you went over to Spain, right? And your initial reaction of, being into that culture. Like, was it like a culture shock,
Yeah, so in 2018, through a study abroad program through my undergrad university, the University of Texas at Austin, I made the trip over to Barcelona, and I wouldn't necessarily quite say that it was the biggest culture shock that one could experience, but when I decided to make my trip to Barcelona, it was kind of a two-pronged approach in terms of what I was hoping to get out of the experience. First and foremost, one thing that is an especially interesting thing I would say about me is the fact that I enjoy learning languages. I've taken over 20 credit hours of Spanish coursework during my time in Barcelona. I also took a 3 credit hour Intro to Catalan language course. And the second prong is just based on my passion of soccer. I really wanted to see Messi play in person, the player that I always grew up watching on TV and playing with in FIFA. And it was a very great experience, and happy to expand on that.
So what does Catalan mean? What's the background of Catalan, and how does the Spanish, I know Barcelona, Real Madrid are the two biggest clubs, but how does, we usually hear Barcelona being more associated with the Catalan. What does that mean?
Yeah, so Catalan, it's the regional language of a region in Spain called Catalonia. And so what I found to be very interesting about taking my intro Catalan language course, so geographically speaking, Barcelona is located actually quite close to the French border. I mean, it's not quite close, but it's within the area. And so learning the language, it was fascinating in the sense that it was a conglomeration of a lot of Spanish-based words, but also a lot of French words as well. And so if you're trying to understand the history of Catalan and Catalonia, I have a very limited background based on my understanding of it, but it's definitely in order to understand the likes of FC Barcelona, Catalonia, everything along those lines, I would describe it as a situation of regional pride, very similar to what you would experience in Texas in the United States.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Me being from Texas, I definitely understand that Texans always believe, even if we're wrong, we always believe we're right in one way or another. So I can definitely appreciate that. What was your initial reaction as a soccer fan heading into, let's say that probably one of the most reputable soccer countries in the world, if not, top three?
Yeah, it was quite an interesting experience growing up being a soccer fan in the United States. I had grown up attending the likes of Orlando City matches when they were in the USL, now in the MLS. The environment in the United States, one thing I'm very happy about is I feel like the environment at games in the United States are continuing to increase in terms of intensity and all of the other good indicators. But when I was in Spain, I would describe it as truly a cultural experience. As previously mentioned, one of the driving reasons why I wanted to study in Spain was not only the language learning aspect of my personality, but just the ability to watch soccer matches and having the opportunity to watch the likes of Lionel Messi score a goal. It was actually quite interesting. I describe it as almost a religious experience. So when Messi would score a goal, I would look around the stadium and people would start bowing to him. And so that's something that I hadn't quite experienced in the United States.
Yeah, you don't really see that in the MLS. I mean, I'm sure if we had those players that were as iconic and as dynamic as him, I'm sure we would. But over there, him and even when Ronaldo played for Real, those players are just iconic figures to those clubs. So yeah, that's really fascinating. So, what clubs in Spain, going over there, did you support or look into before you went into that area?
Yeah, so based on my background in Spain, I would break it down into two main components. So in 2018, I participated in the study abroad program through the University of Texas at Austin, and then I also participated in a short-term sports law exchange program in 2022 in Madrid. And so for me, I would describe myself as a La Liga fan in general. I really enjoy supporting the likes of FC Barcelona, RCD Espanyol. So both of those clubs are based in the Barcelona region. And then also when I was in Madrid in 2022, I had the opportunity to visit the Wanda Metropolitano regarding Atletico Madrid, and then also the Santiago Bernabeu. Just a big La Liga fan. And it's also just very fascinating to understand the history of the clubs altogether and kind of the moving parts and pieces and how they fit together.
So, how were you? I mean, not to get political, but there's sports politics and a little bit of everything, right? How are you treated? Being like the outsider, if you will, being from the States, even though you have a baseline culture understanding. But how are you, not necessarily treated, but how were you embraced by, just diehard soccer fans? And, you see that in England, Germany, some of these other, France, So what is it like in Spain?
Yeah, so I would just, my experience in Barcelona was actually a quite positive one. So one thing that I think is very important and central to my identity is whenever I travel, I think it's important to try and do your best to do your due diligence and to try and understand the current issues that are going on, to have an awareness of the language, even if it's only a surface level understanding. For me, one thing that I really appreciated about my experience in particular in Barcelona, so when I lived there, I lived in a residence hall with a lot of other, I would describe them as university equivalent students studying at the various universities in Barcelona. And one thing that I found to be a very special moment. So for me, I explained to them in a very basic, or based on my very basic Spanish background, I explained to them in Spanish that I was trying to practice my Spanish while I was over there. And in return, they were interested in practicing their English. And so I would communicate with them in Spanish, and then they would respond to me in English. And so I think for me, just having that mutual respect on both sides, and I mean, they had an awareness that I was actually trying to learn, and I had the mutual respect for them that they were trying to learn English as well. And so I would describe that in particular as a bonding moment.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've definitely learned that in my experience that at least if you try, in my world, at least if you try, even if you mess up terribly, if you show the effort, you'll get more respect, if you will, just if you show the effort. Yeah. So, did you guys, were you on a tour or how, I know when you toured all these different stadiums, and we'll talk about the stadiums individually, but were you on a tour or was it part of the university program, or is it just like, hey, I got a weekend off, I'm gonna go to the Bernabeu?
Yeah, so I would say the majority of my soccer experiences have actually been pretty voluntary, just kind of independent projects that I've done on my own. When I was in Barcelona, fortunately, I was also there with some other American students who were similarly interested in watching soccer matches, touring soccer stadiums. So when our mutual plans would align, we would take different soccer stadium tours together. But actually, one thing that I found to be quite enjoyable in a weird way is actually to participate in a lot of these experiences by myself. And because of that, I found myself more open to the possibility of meeting new people. So, for example, the very first European soccer match I ever attended was a Barcelona Champions League group stage match against PSV from the Dutch league, and it's actually quite cool to have been able to meet other fans from different countries across Europe who just happened to be at that match as well. I attended the match by myself, and I didn't have any issue with that. I was there for the opportunity to just take it all in, and it didn't really matter to me who I was with.
That's really cool. So, like, I feel like I'm gonna be saying that a lot, but we see it in a lot of, especially derby games or derby games, depending on where you're from. Did you feel comfortable? I mean, let's be honest, it's a fish out of water scenario. Were you comfortable, or is it? I know you already said that it was embracing on one aspect of it, but was it? It's a Champions League game, which are not necessarily hostile games, but they're high intensity games. Were you relatively comfortable in that scenario with your somewhat, Spanish familiarity?
Yeah, I would say I was quite comfortable in Barcelona, mainly just because I think Barcelona is a very internationally minded city, and in Barcelona, it's quite common to meet people from all over, not only Europe but the world, whether it's to pursue the very delicious food that they have there in Barcelona, or to check out the beach, or to pursue soccer-related endeavors such as going to an FC Barcelona match or taking a tour of the stadium. I felt like I was embraced, and I didn't really feel any moments of tension, but at the same time, it's also important to open yourself up. I think that sometimes all it takes is just saying a hello, or just any sort of kind gesture to indicate that you're open to communication, rather than, I don't know, maybe keeping your head down or not making eye contact with other people, maybe in the line to get a drink. One actually interesting aspect of European soccer matches that I find to be quite interesting. So in the United States, at a traditional American football game, people are constantly getting up and down out of their seats to go and get concessions and whatnot. The thing I find to be quite interesting about the European soccer model in terms of the fan base is everybody sits in their seat for the entire first half, and then everybody gets up if they choose to get their concessions at halftime or before the match. And so that is one thing I especially respect about the European fan bases, the fact that, they're there for the match, and, they take it very seriously, and they try to watch every minute they can.
Yeah. So I never even thought about that. That's really, really cool. I think it shows more respect to the game, and, you got to think about it. And, I'm a big college football fan here in the States. So, there's commercials, there's timeouts and all sorts of stuff. And obviously we don't have that in the soccer world. So you can easily see why someone would want to plant themselves into a game. And out of all the games I've been to, whether it's European teams come here to the States or in the MLS, I don't think I've ever got out of my seat outside of halftime. Because I'm afraid I'm gonna miss something, because especially in Champions League matches, you'll miss like a highlight moment that you'll possibly never see again.
Yeah. One interesting aside that I think is worth mentioning. So I studied in Barcelona during a very interesting time during heightened political tensions between the Catalonian region and the Madrid region during a heightened era of, from my limited understanding, the Catalonians, there's always been a secessionist movement there to try and break away from the rest of Spain and to become their own country. But at the time, I just happened to be there during a heightened political era. And so it was actually quite fascinating, being an outsider, being an American, trying to take that in and try and kind of understand how different people felt about the situation and everything along those lines.
Okay, cool. So we talked about, so what's, probably one of the most iconic stadiums of all time, right? Is Camp Nou, right? So I'm just looking at it now. It is absolutely massive. It is a massive stadium. What is it about Camp Nou that at least, and let's not shy away from the fact. I mean, this is kind of a side topic, but Barcelona haven't had the best, financial record the last few years, right? It's pretty well known that the club is, financially, I don't want to say unstable, but they've had their problems with, transfers and money and also all sorts of stuff. Even, you can even call it from, when the fall of the the European Super League, right, which Barcelona was a huge push for. But what is it about that area, Camp Nou, that just is just dumbfounding? Like it's just absolutely massive.
Yeah. And so what I find to be quite interesting about the Camp Nou is from my perspective, you have certain stadiums like the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London that is it's a very new and modern and high-tech stadium. One thing I especially admire about Camp Nou is although it is a insanely large stadium, it feels like a historic relic. One interesting thing about the FC Barcelona Camp Nou tour is there's actually a small cathedral inside of the tunnel where the players walk out, and you can just tell that that religion and the game go very hand in hand together, and it's very reflective of the FC Barcelona tradition. And so, whether it's through attending the tour and checking out the museum or admiring I would say Camp Nou, it's a bit of an older stadium in comparison to a stadium like the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I know that Barcelona, I believe, are working towards renovations to make the stadium more modern, but I will say that I can really appreciate the historic and not necessarily the overly modern feel that you may get at other stadiums, as much as I can appreciate the modern feel at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as well.
Yeah, and, there's a lot of, I won't call it politics, but there's a lot of, sports jokes that go around for Barcelona that, they were selling a lot of their players, and they were selling, we actually saw it this past summer, I believe, that they were selling a lot of their TV rights because they couldn't afford for paying their players for X amount of reasons and whatever. And I read somewhere, this kind of a joke, that they were actually allowing people to get married inside the stadium to make a couple extra $100 and everything. But wouldn't that be a cool story though? I mean, all things considered, like you actually got married in Camp Nou.
That's awesome. It's very interesting you bring that up. It reminds me. So when I was actually over in Barcelona not too long ago, when they were trying to drive more funds toward the club, there was also an option where you could play in some sort of exhibition match as well, if that's something that you wanted to do, play in an FC Barcelona Camp Nou experience match. And so I commend I can't speak on the financial situation or anything like that, just because I don't know all of the moving parts and pieces to that. But I do commend the club for trying to be creative and think outside the box to try and drive more revenue into the club during this time.
Yeah, they're definitely creative for sure. So what about RCDE Stadium?
Yeah, and so that was actually a really interesting experience. Although I didn't attend the stadium tour, there were a few students in the study abroad program who I participated in who attended a tour of the RCDE Espanyol Stadium, and through learning about that experience, it piqued my interest to learn more myself about everything going on with Espanyol. So on the other side of town, you have the Espanyol Stadium, and it's a quite fascinating stadium. My experience with the stadium is I attended the crosstown rivalry game between FC Barcelona and Espanyol, which was awesome. It was just on my bucket list after learning about the other La Liga teams in the area and whatnot.
and the Metropolitano, right?
Yeah, the Wanda
The Wanda
Metropolitano.
Metropolitano.
Yeah, that's a beautiful stadium. That's actually it's not located in the downtown Madrid area by any means. It's about, I would say, a 1 hour metro ride from the downtown area to see the Atletico facilities. But I was very, very impressed with those as well. And although I didn't attend a match there, it is on my bucket list to return to Madrid to see Atletico play at some point in the future.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of Bayern Munich, Bayern Munich Stadium, especially on the outside.
Yes, the Allianz.
Yeah, the Allianz. Yeah, beautiful stadium. I've never been through the Allianz. It's on my bucket list for sure, but very beautiful stadium. I love the fact that they colored the outside of it, and the Allianz is kind of famous for that. The outside of it kind of looks like a balloon, and they changed the colors of it. Yeah, that's just wild. And I applaud Spain for their stadiums because they're very intimate. Soccer clubs in general are very intimate, but Spanish clubs, I think, because it's more embracing of the culture, that their clubs are more, intimate. You see here in the States where and this is why I kind of get at like NFL fans and some maybe even baseball fans, that the stadiums are just large because a lot of times they just care about people, right? People equals tickets, tickets equal money. But when it comes to the people and the culture and everything, you're just there to go see the game. You look at stadiums like this, you're just surrounded by, 50, 60, 70,000 people, who, for the next 90 minutes are your closest friends.
Yes, most definitely. It's quite an interesting experience to attend a soccer match, especially a European soccer match, and it truly is a cultural experience. Especially during the El Clasico match that I attended between Barcelona and Real Madrid, during the heightened political time, you could almost feel the tension trickling into the match itself. One thing that the television broadcast won't necessarily show you is every single match, the FC Barcelona supporter group will conduct some sort of very peaceful chant. Or I don't know all the words to the chant, so I can't speak on that aspect of it. But they will essentially protest the current political situation, and so it was especially interesting witnessing that at the El Clasico match.
Yeah, that's just super cool. And then last up we have the Bernabeu, right? The iconic one and only Bernabeu. This is a stadium that a lot of players and pundits say it's unreal to be there.
Yeah. The Santiago Bernabeu. I spent one experience there. I didn't actually attend an actual match there, but I just happened to be in Madrid during the same week as the Champions League final from the past year, and so what I did is I actually attended the big watch party that they had at the Santiago Bernabeu, where they essentially put a giant jumbotron screen in the middle of the field, and then all of the Madrista fans got together and we all watched the final together, and that was quite something. Regarding the Bernabeu itself, it's actually quite fascinating in the sense that they're undergoing lots of massive renovations. When I was there were lots of cranes up. There was a lot of construction activity. They're really trying to brand themselves, I think, as a very modern stadium down the stretch, similar to Tottenham Hotspur and the Allianz Stadium in Munich as well, or like them as well.
Yeah. From the inside looking out in some of these photos, it kind of reminds me of the San Siro a little bit in Milan, where AC Milan play. It's this structurally, integrally speaking, it looks very similar to the San Siro.
And I can't speak as much on the San Siro, but from my understanding, I think they have stadium plans over in Milan to create a new stadium, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. They've been talking about it for a little bit. Uh, yeah, that's just crazy. So, what's the atmosphere like and the culture around, these iconic stadiums and these iconic clubs? Granted, I know that a lot of these clubs, they're different regions, different fans, and each of these fans have their own cultures, their own chants, all that kind of stuff. So, what is it like, around these stadiums?
It's quite interesting, and as a history buff myself, one thing I really especially admire about soccer and studying these clubs and just understanding the stadiums is everything is tied together. The culture, the history, the pedigree of winning tradition that many of the clubs that we've recently spoken about have, and they're very proud of it. Whether it's down to the specific reason why FC Barcelona's colors are red and blue, all the way down to some of the socioeconomic stuff as well. And this isn't necessarily related to Spain, but one aside, one soccer rivalry that I've been especially fascinated in is the Boca Juniors and River Plate rivalry. So when I was over in Spain, when I was in Spain in 2018 studying in Barcelona, I was trying to figure out logistically a way for me to make my layover to Madrid for a weekend trip, because during the Copa Libertadores tournament that year, between Boca Juniors and River Plate, they just happened to play each other in the final. And leading up to the match in Argentina, apparently there were some hooligan supporters who threw, I don't know if it was tear gas or something along those lines, into the Boca Juniors bus. So they actually had to relocate the match to the Santiago Bernabeu, where they played that final. And so I had the opportunity to watch that game in my residence hall with a lot of my friends from Spain at the time.
Yeah, so so you watched River Plate and Boca play each other with their fans, essentially.
Well, I didn't watch I didn't watch that particular match in Madrid. I didn't get a chance to go to the match, but I got a chance to watch it in Barcelona with my friends. But it was just quite interesting to not only be there during the heightened political tension between the Madrid and Barcelona regions, but just to be in the same country as the big anticipated match between Boca Juniors and River Plate in Spain, which from my limited understanding, seems quite unprecedented to play a South American tournament championship match across the pond in Europe. And so it was just from afar, It was quite interesting.
I wonder why they did it that way versus just going to another place. Maybe I'm sure it has to do with fans, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Versus I don't know why they just don't play in Texas. Yeah, just play in Texas or California, someplace easy, I would assume. So do you, this kind of off topic, do you see any of, here in the MLS, right? Do you see any of this, this Spanish culture coming over? Spanish culture in general when it comes to soccer is scattered everywhere, right? But when it comes to the club side of things, with MLS and, being, in Austin or New York, Chicago, Portland, whatever, do you see any of this Spanish culture and maybe even the atmosphere being brought into the MLS?
Are you referring more to the Spanish language itself, or Spain, Spain?
Just Spain.
I'm trying to think. I would say, I can't necessarily speak on that, but with regard to the Spanish language itself, one thing that I find to be very interesting, and one thing that I think is really cool based on my passion for learning languages like Spanish, is clubs like Austin FC have taken after adopting certain Spanish words and phrases as part of their overall club chants. So, for example, Austin FC will say Verde and Listos, and I think it's a really cool thing to see the interblending of different cultures, whether English words, Spanish words. I'm all for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think. I'm being from Houston, I see it in Houston a lot. You see it in Atlanta. You see it in Miami for sure. I'm sure, yeah, in Austin. I'm sure there's some on some of the other ones. So I've always thought that the MLS was behind when it came to that kind of stuff, because the MLS, in my eyes, is more. Let's just say it's more, Americanized. Like, you don't, like, historically speaking, a lot of European clubs haven't been owned by American owners because of, call it culture, call it politics, whatever the reason is, right? And we saw that with the fall of the European Super Cup, right? With, Manchester United and Arsenal and all these different fans of, the big six, if you will, get invited, that's just English, right? That excludes Barcelona and Bayern Munich and Juventus and some of these other ones. But, that Americanized, put butts in seats, right? Kind of way. That's not how it is in Europe. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I think that's one of the things that the MLS teams have to learn, is that it's not about butts in seats, right? It's about, I always reference, Welcome to Wrexham, because it's about the town and what the town brings to the club and what the club brings back to the town. These teams and these clubs are, 200 some odd years old, right? If not more, and I think that, especially here in the MLS, that a lot of owners have to learn is that they can't just pop up and make a club. It doesn't, and you see that with expansion teams, when like hockey, baseball, soccer, of course. And, you don't see that in Europe, right? Because it's a town and you got the, promotion, relegation, all that other stuff. And I think that's one thing that I really hope, and a lot of fans hope, that the MLS would adopt, is the promotion relegation between, was it USL and, the MLS too. But hopefully they come to something like that. I don't know if they ever will. But time will only tell.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, one of my life goals is to do everything I can to take what I've learned through my varied experiences in soccer and just in sport in general, to do what I can to try and promote the game of soccer in any possible way I can, whether it's through going on a podcast like this, whether it's through writing a blog article, or just attending matches and posting on social media. I really do believe that although I don't anticipate the promotion relegation system coming into the United States anytime soon. I think, especially in light of the World Cup coming up soon, I think if we all can play our collective part, I think that it can be a beautiful thing to, continue to bring more awareness to this. I really attribute a lot of who I am to the valuable lessons that I learned on the pitch as a player growing up and during my youth. And there's definitely a long way to go here in the United States, but I'm really, really excited. There's a lot of positive and growing energy, I believe, in this country, especially in light of the United States making it out of the group stage, given the circumstances in Qatar.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I hope I don't see it happening either when it comes to promotion or relegation. It would be cool. They would have to figure some stuff out. And I know it turned a lot of heads with, I think Landon Donovan's expansion team or whatever, USL team, got picked up for an expansion slot. I know that peeved a lot of people off, for various reasons. But, like I said, time will only tell, and, we'll see what happens. And, looking forward to the World Cup. So, Mel, you have any parting shots? Do you have any ending comments? This is, very, very fun. I love doing stuff like this. I love having people like you guys that, come onto the show and speak about your personal experience, your fish out of water kind of experience.
Yeah.
And,
some parting thoughts. the main emotion that I would like to relay at this moment is just an emotion of gratitude to yourself. I'm very, very thankful for the opportunity to come on a podcast and talk about what I love. I consider it to be something that I view very naturally, that comes to me rather easily when it comes to just talking about soccer things, just because I really do. I try to live, breathe, and eat soccer, and just in sports in general. And at some point in the future, it would be awesome to get together in person, whether it's attending an Austin FC match or whether it's watching a World Cup game together down the stretch in the coming years. I view this as a great opportunity to continue to bond over the beautiful game that we love and cherish. And so again, just want to emphasize my gratitude to you today, Kyle.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, man. That's it. That's the show. We're done for the recording. And I like to remind everyone that this is the Inside the 90 podcast, the home for everything soccer, because we talk about stuff that a lot of people don't want to talk about. Yeah. Let's talk about highlights and sports reels and great moments. Yeah. But, what do those moments mean? Right. And that's like the stuff that I like to talk about and the experiences that you experience. So thank you for coming on the show, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again.
Thank you again, Kyle. I really appreciate it.